Entrepreneurs and COOs, one is not better than the other. They're just different. And most entrepreneurs are not cut out to work for someone else as the COO. Most entrepreneurs could never work for someone else. It's why we're doing our own thing. Most COOs don't have that risk tolerance and DNA, nor do they even want to put in that time and risk to really run that role. And a great example of a COO is Sheryl Sandberg, who is the COO for Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook. She made gazillions of dollars being that second in command. I was speaking to one of my kids the other day. He's 21, running his own company, and I said 97% of humans should never run their own business. They don't have the entrepreneurial DNA. They don't necessarily have the skill set, the risk tolerance. They don't maybe have the connections or the network, or they're not willing to put in that grind. And I think entrepreneurship has sadly become too trendy, too fun, too kind of promoted on social media about look how great everything is. But no entrepreneur will ever share the really hard stories because it harms the business or harms ourselves. So we end up having this kind of glossy view of what entrepreneurship is. But if you ever run your own business, you know it takes an awfully long time to get to the night before you become that overnight success story. So I think a lot of people, though, should be entrepreneurial, right? They should be able to maybe figure out their core unique ability and maybe do that for multiple companies, but they won't necessarily want to build a business around themselves. I actually grew up as an entrepreneur. I ran my first little business venture. I was 7 years old. I found coat hangers in the neighborhood, collected them from hundreds of homes, and then sold them to a dry cleaner in Winnipeg, Canada. Had negotiated with 6 different dry cleaners out of the Yellow Pages, and I was only 7 years old doing that. So I grew up with this little weird entrepreneurial mindset, probably had a dozen different entrepreneurial ventures by the time I was 18. And when I was 20 years old, I had 12 full-time employees working for me already, running a house painting business while I was in second year university. My dad was an entrepreneur, and both sets of grandparents were entrepreneurs. So we really grew up in this family that being told that running our own business was about having free time. I got involved in a mastermind community when I was around early 30s, late 20s, and I was building out a collision repair chain. That company is now called Gerber Auto Collision, and we grew it into the largest collision repair chain in the world. I then was hired as the president of a private currency company that we built and sold. And while I was doing that, I met a guy. We became very, very close friends. He ended up being my best man at my wedding. And he was building out a company called the Rubbish Boys, was changing the name over to call it 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And he asked me if I would come on board and coach him and work with him. I said I would coach him, but I would never work for him. 6.5 years later, we finished that engagement up, and we had taken the company to 330 cities and 106 million, 3,000 employees, and I'd been the COO for that trajectory. So that was kind of my path. I left there 18 years ago. And since then, I've been paid to speak now in 29 countries around the world. I've written 6 books, and I own an organization called the COO Alliance, which is a large mastermind community for the second in command. And then I also have an online course called Invest in Your Leaders. Entrepreneurs and COOs, one is not better than the other. They're just different. It's kind of like men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Men are not hairy versions of women. We just see the world differently, perceive the world differently, solve the world differently. Most guys don't want to be women. Most women don't want to be guys. Most COOs don't want to be CEOs. And most entrepreneurs are not cut out to work for someone else as the COO. Most entrepreneurs could never work for someone else. It's why we're doing our own thing. Most COOs don't have that risk tolerance and DNA, nor do they even want to put in that time and risk to really run that role. And a great example of a COO is Sheryl Sandberg, who is the COO for Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook. She made gazillions of dollars being that second in command. I used to coach the COO of Sprint, the 82nd largest company in the United States. Jamie's base salary was $2.7 million a year, plus long-term incentives. He didn't need to be an entrepreneur. He was raking it in. So you can actually do very, very well in the lane that you decide that you belong in, as long as you work on that. And that's why we started the COO Alliance, was we wanted a network and a community for COOs to work on their skills, their confidence, and their connections, so they could become better as COOs, both as leaders and build a better company. If you're not good in sales, you'll suck as an entrepreneur. You're selling employees to come and work for you. You're selling customers to come and sell or buy from you. You're selling bankers to invest or investors to invest, suppliers to work with you. You're selling people to quit great jobs and join a firm that is smaller. You're constantly in sales mode. You're selling your employees to work on projects, work longer, work harder, drive core values. You're always in sales mode. And if you're not good at that, you'll never be successful as an entrepreneur. Most very, very good students, like the A students, the top of the class students, are really bad as entrepreneurs because they've never dealt with the adversity. Now, they've worked hard and studied hard, but because they were always succeeding, they don't know how to deal with failure. I was the exact opposite. I failed at every class. I got terrible grades in school, terrible grades in high school, terrible grades in college, had to basically cheat or find the cheat sheets or get people to write my exams for me. My grades in high school were mid 60%, same with university. So I was used to failing. I would try as hard as I could, study as hard as I could, and I'd get a C minus. So for me, failure was just called Tuesday. But if you're used to getting A's on everything, and then you're getting no, you're hearing no, you're getting no, you tend to give up or you start to doubt yourself. But that true entrepreneur is usually the B and C student that knows that they can't cut it in the real world working for somebody else, nor does our DNA work well for us. In the school system, I was told to pay attention, sit still, stop being so disruptive. Why wasn't I trying so hard? Meanwhile, I was extraordinarily bored. I didn't know why the teacher was going so slow. There were 17 other things I was interested in, and I was already running a little business. It was kind of boring sitting there. So, yeah, just a very different DNA type.